Hi boys and girls. So today we're doing lesson 3 and we're going to talk about spring. We already talked about winter. Spring in Spanish is called primavera. Our friend pal Annie last week talked about, the last week before spring break talked about the season of winter, and today we're going to talk about the season of spring, and we're going to learn how winter goes into spring, and how does the climate change, the weather changes, and what happens outside. Okay, so let's begin. After winter, the next season is spring. Here, spring means time of the year when flowers in bloom. Don't forget to sniff your flower when you hear the word spring. Spring arrives gradually, bit by bit, beginning in mid-March, and continues throughout the months of April and May. The warm the warm air in the ground begins to thaw, meaning it begins to melt, because winter was cold, and now we're going into spring. It's beginning. The snow is melting. The snow and the ice begin to melt, and the ground is no longer hard or frozen. Because the days are longer and there is more sunlight, the rivers and the streams fill with water from the melted snow and ice. The rivers and the streams fill with water from all the melted snow and ice. Tiny green leaves appear on some branches. New plants may also start to peek out of the soil here and there. Hibernating animals wake up from their winter sleep. Did you know that some animals like to sleep most of the time during winter? They hibernate during winter when it's cold and wake up when it becomes warm in spring. These are all signs that spring has sprung. Spring is here. Spring is a very windy season. People say March comes like a lion and goes like a lamb. This means that weather in spring changes from being stormy and windy, with the stream of a powerful lion in the beginning, of calm or mild by the end, like a soft, gentle lamb in fact. And the windy begins of spring is a perfect time to fly a kite. In addition to wind, there are many rainy days in the spring, particularly in March and April. I love when I get to wear my raincoat and rain boots, because that means I can splash in puddles. Sometimes after spring rain showers, you can see a colorful rainbow in the sky. There is another old saying that tells us April showers bring May flowers. That means that rain in April helps flowering plants grow big and healthy, so they can produce beautiful, fragrant flowers in May throughout the summer. In addition, then the world outside truly changes during spring. Flowers are one of the most important signs of spring, because they can tell you that the plant of the world has become life once again. Now, soon bees will be buzzing around into new on the flowers and to their leafy trees, and after hours will begin a warm and pleasant. Washington, D.C. is famous for its cherry blossoms. Um, in April, the cherry trees throughout the city burst into bloom, and millions of trees, billion pink and white flowers, can spring here and there. My parents and I have a special spring picnic every year under the cherry blossoms. Now, also in farming, spring is an important time for farming. For the farmer, it's time to get back to the fields, and the farmer must plow its soil and prepare it for planting. He plows the field in order to stir up the soil's nutrients, that the food and plants are loosened to the ground, so that new seeds will be able to take root. When the time is right, the farmer will go through his plowed field and plant his seeds into neat rows. A couple weeks later, the field will be brimming with little green seedlings and young plants, and by summer you won't be able to see the brown soil and all beneath the all green leaves. Spring is also part of an important time for the animals on the farm. Many animals give birth to new baby animals in the springtime. The barn animals in the fields are full of baby animals whose mother nurse and care for them. You have baby horses, you have a baby sheep, and some ducklings with their mother going in line on the pond. Washington D.C. is has several has a banks full of rivers. So these are banks that are full of water, and this is melted snow, and its surroundings, fields, and mountains drains into the creeks of steeps throughout the ground to each river, where it will eventually flow into the sea. Sometimes the river water becomes really high, and sometimes it causes floods. Several holidays are celebrated during the springtime. On a Christian holiday of Easter, people often go to Easter egg hunts to look for decorated eggs or Easter baskets full of candy. During the Jewish holidays or Passover, special food is served to family and friends at the Passover Seder. The Hindu holiday of Holi is a festival of colors during which people celebrate the colors of springtime by dancing and singing and sprinkling colored water on each other. Now, we also celebrate Memorial Day. Memorial Day is celebrated the last day of May. On this day, we honor the American men and women who have fought and died in different ways to protect the United States. Many people also celebrate Memorial Day with parades, picnics, barbecues, and family gatherings in Washington, D.C. We have big concerts to celebrate. What is spring like where you live? Is it any different from the spring in Washington, D.C.? So not our pen pal Annie is asking you how spring is here in Florida. Remember, we live in Florida. Annie lives in Washington, D.C., and she's described to you how spring looks like over there. Now we have to think about how spring is like here in Florida. So that's your read it loud. You have to answer some questions. You can tell me verbally. You can name me the months of the spring. We have three, so we have 3 months. So I'll give you one. One of them is March, and think about what's after March. Then what's after that month, and then there's three. Then describe some changes that happen from winter to spring. So what happens during winter, and how does it look like in spring? So what happens? What is going on? I'll give you a clue. Remember, in the winter it's cold. So when we get closer to spring, the plants start to lose that snow. So the snow is thawing, okay? Now last question. Why does the author say that spring is an important time on the farm? So why is it important time on farming? So I said that they said that farming is important because they said that that's when plants, new crops start to grow. Okay, boys and girls. So that's your read aloud for chapter lesson 3 about spring.